Yes, my people, it is your boy VRD, and we are back in our second commentary run video. In the first commentary run video, we drove a Thameslink Class 700 from Dartford down to Rainham Station, and we are now going to perform the return journey from Gillingham Depot, which is more or less in Rainham. We're going to drive from Gillingham Depot back up to Dartford. Rainham Station is probably about a mile in that direction, so there's honestly not a lot of missed track that we haven't gone over. I'll probably cover that section of track in a different video in the future, but yeah, I've actually done something quite different. Before starting the recording of this video, I've gone into this Class 700 and shut it down, so it is currently in an unelectrified state, which is also known as a cold and dark state. I'm going to enter this Class 700 now and perform what is known as a cold start. Obviously, if you've spawned in, you're not going to come across a Class 700 in this state. It will already be in an electrified state, but I just want to be a show off, so I'm going to show you guys the cold start procedure. First thing we do is enter the rear cab, and we are going to press and hold the battery on button. I'm going to hold it for about 10 seconds, although I'm sure you don't need to hold it for that long, but better safe than sorry. So 10 seconds should have elapsed by now. Go to release the battery on button, and as you can see, the driver Amanda appliance has illuminated, and the GSMR radio handset performed a little self-test sequence. That is a good indication that the battery supply is now active. As I said before, the way the cab has been configured is not the way you would come across it if you were to spawn in here at Gillingham Depot. I've gone and done this myself. So I believe that is all we need to do at this end of the train. I'm going to exit the rear cab, close the door, and before making my way to the other end of the train, I'm going to observe that we have two red tail lights being displayed, which we do. So I'm now going to make my way towards the front end of this 8-carriage train. I do apologize if I sound half dead in the commentary. It is currently, what time is it? It's 1:30 in the morning. I'm exhausted. I'm honestly knackered, but I wanted to get this done before going to bed. And the actual drive out of the depot, I'm gonna record that when I wake up in about 3 hours time. Life. So now we're at the other end of the train. I'm going to perform the same check of the tail lights. We should have two red tail lights illuminated here at the front, which we do. I'm now going to enter the front cab, and the first thing we are going to do is, no, we are not, I forgot, I've already activated the safety systems. So TPWS/AWS, vigilance, and driver safety device. Normally you would have to activate those yourself, but before recording this video I actually came up here and activated them, so we don't need to do that. I'm now going to sit in the driver's seat, insert the master key, and acknowledge the AWS self-test sequence.
TPWS and AWS operational.
As you can see here on the, I can't remember what this screen is called, but on this screen here you can see that our line voltage is currently at 0, which means we are not drawing electricity from the electrified third row. What we need to do is simply turn the mode switch into the DC position and turn the power supply switch into the on position. And once that stops flashing, we should be at 750 volts, which we are. You can now turn the mode switch back into the auto position or leave it in the DC position. It's up to you. I'm obviously going to turn it into the auto position because it looks better there. Now would be a good time to also set your headlights appropriately. Because we are in a depot, the correct configuration for this environment would be the marker light position, which the switch is currently in. I'm now going to pop outside and just ensure that those are being displayed correctly, which they are. As you know, on the Class 700, when no master key is inserted, the train will automatically revert to displaying tail lights. Once a master key is inserted, the respective lights, no, that's bad wording. The lights will show, they will display the corresponding configuration with the headlight switch. There we go. So yeah, back into the cab. We now need to perform a static brake test. That is done by moving the F and R switch into the forward position. We're going to look at the brake cylinder gauge. Move the PBC into the emergency position. Observe the brake cylinder gauge reading shoot up to 3 bar. Move the PBC back into the full service position. The brake cylinder gauge should reduce slightly. We're now going to make gradual reductions in the braking effort, just until the PBC is just shy of the off position. You now go into the off position. The brake cylinder gauge reading should be held just above 1 bar. And then we push the PBC right the way back into the emergency position. We now pull back on the PBC, move it back into the full service position, and ensure that the brake cylinder gauge reading corresponds with those two movements. F and R switch now goes back into the neutral position. We now press the emergency brake plunger here on the dashboard and ensure that the brake cylinder gauge reading corresponds with that action, so it should shoot up to 3 bar. Pull it back out and the brake cylinder gauge reading should reduce slightly. And do the exact same thing with the other emergency brake plunger. Yep, that looks absolutely fine to me. So the static brake test has been successful. The final thing we need to do is turn on the passenger saloon lights, and that is done by pressing, where is it, this button here. And as you can see, the passenger saloon lights are now on, and I believe that is the cold start procedure complete. So we are now going to sit here and wait for our scheduled departure time at 04:48. See you guys in a bit. Okay, so we are down to 2 minutes, well, 1 minute and 10 seconds prior to our departure time out of Gillingham Depot. We will be calling at Gillingham Depot Reception Road, Gillingham, Chatham, Rochester, Strood, Higham, Gravesend, Northfleet, Swanscombe, Greenhithe, Stone Crossing, and finally Dartford. A total journey time of just under an hour. So it's now 4:48 and we are required to wait an additional 2 minutes before we can depart from Gillingham Depot here. Oh yeah, I didn't end up waking up in the 3 hours. Like I said, this is being recorded about 24 hours after the first bit of this video. I don't know who I thought I was. 3 hours sleep, no way. So yeah, I've gone a whole day doing other things, tackling other priorities. So apologies in advance, my commentary is going to sound half dead, but I'll push through it. I'll still get some high quality content out for you guys. Just finding a couple things to talk about while we wait for our departure time. I'm going to go and Snapchat. I'm going to go I'm going to go on Snapchat. Okay, so it is now 4:50 and we can depart from Gillingham Depot. However, As you can see, there is no signal ahead of us. So before we reset the DRA, we are required to manually set our route. If if you're ever departing and you don't have a signal ahead of you, you must always come to the map here and ensure that your route has been set correctly before resetting the DRA and moving your train. Failure to do so could result in a rather embarrassing crash slash derailment, and you do not want that. Trust me, it's happened to me before. It is it's quite hilarious, but it's very embarrassing. So our route has now been set correctly for the what is it? Gillingham Depot Reception Road 2. Now going to reset the DRA.
Driver, you have reset the DRA. Please check the signal.
There's no signal here, however we've already checked that our route has been correctly set. I'm now going to move the FNR switch into the forward position. Move the PBC into the off position. And before moving off, I'm going to sound a short blast of the depot whistle. Now going to apply 25% power. Observe the brake cylinder gauge reading full to 0 bar. And the speed limit inside Gillingham Depot is 15 miles an hour. Once we reach that speed, I will move the PBC into the off position. Now up to 15 miles an hour, so I've moved the PBC into the off position. And the momentum that we have should carry us all the way up to our stopping position at Gillingham. I keep forgetting what it's called. Gillingham Depot Reception Road 2. You can see a red signal coming up. That is where we need to stop, just in front of that red signal. So I'm going to begin braking now. Just a 25% brake application. Down to 10 miles an hour. Almost releasing the brakes now, just to come to a nice controlled stop. And we have a test magnet coming up for the automatic warning system, so I'm anticipating an audible alert of said system. There we go, acknowledging that now. And coming to a stop about a carriage length away from this signal. Now that we're at a stand, PBC goes into the full service position, FNR switch goes into neutral, and set the DRA due to the fact that we are at a red signal. We now have a 6-minute wait here at Gillingham Depot. What is it called? Gillingham Depot Reception Road 2. So I'm going to edit down the video and see you guys when we're ready to depart. I actually almost forgot, because we are more or less at the exits of Gillingham Depot. The main lines are directly ahead of us and we'll be joining those in a second. I am going to move the headlight switch into the dipped beam position. I'm now going to exit the cab. In reality, you'd want to exit on the side that has no electrified third rail, which would be the right hand side in this case. Climb down, just glance at the front of the train and ensure that our dipped beam headlights are illuminated, which they are. Now going to return to the cab, close the cab door and sit in our driver's seat and continue to wait for our scheduled departure time at 0500. Okay, it is now 0500. I am falling asleep. This signal ahead of us should clear any minute now. Okay, no, we have an additional 1 minute wait. I don't know why the game does that. Oh boy. It is currently 23:17 in real time. I am knackered. Absolutely knackered. Okay, it is now 0501, so the signal should now clear any minute now. Hello? Hello? There we go, finally. Right, so our signal is cleared to a green aspect with the number 2 just below it on the little display there. That tells us we've been routed into Gillingham platform 2, which is where we are scheduled to stop. So not wasting too much time here. Resetting the
Driver, you
DRA.
have reset the DRA. Please check the
Yes, checking the signal again, still green. FNR switching to forward. 25% power. And observing the brake cylinder gauge reading full to 0. Now going to increase the power to 50% just to have a bit of a higher rate of acceleration up to 15 miles an hour, which is still the speed limit. Just reducing the power back down to 25% as we reach 10 miles an hour, just to have a more controlled acceleration up to 15 miles an hour. And once we reach 15 miles an hour, I move the PBC into the off position. Once the back of our train is clear of the point work, the speed limit will be increasing to 60 miles an hour. So the back of our train should now be clear of the point work. I'm going to begin accelerating towards 60 miles an hour. However, we're not going to get up to that much speed at all due to the fact that Gillingham station is right in front of us. So I've accelerated up to 25 miles an hour, move the PBC back into the off position. And once we get to about midway along the platform, I'm going to make a 25% brake application and increase the braking force where necessary. 25% seems to be doing the job. I'm actually going to momentarily reduce that just a bit. Increase it back up to 25. Just make minor adjustments of the braking force as we come to our stopping position here, and that is a perfect stop. Full service into neutral. Doors are on the left. And we now have a 2-minute wait here at Gillingham station. As you guys saw in the journey in the other direction, the timetable is extraordinarily... What is that? Is that... Oh, that's... Okay. There's an insect walking on my TV screen, but I thought it was in the game. Anyway, as I was saying, the timetable is extremely tight, as you guys saw in the other video in the other direction. So I'm going to be driving rather aggressively on this journey, braking extremely late, accelerating extremely hard, just in an effort to stick to the timetable. That is really distracting me. There's like a small insect walking across my TV screen. That is very frustrating. I would like to get up and kill it, but I can't be bothered. So at 5:05 and 30 seconds, which is 30 seconds prior to our departure time of 05:06, I'm going to close the doors. I'm just glancing at the signal aspect from now. We can see that it is green. 27, 28, 29, 30. Closing the doors. Door interlock light has illuminated. Glancing at the CCTV monitors here. No one's trapped inside the doors. Green signal. FNR switch into forward. 25% power. Brake cylinder gauge reading falls to 0. Final glance at the monitors. And full power. That particular signal was fitted with an R8 indicator. However, the R8 indicators are not functional in train sim mode. In real life, there would be a member of staff situated on the platform. They would observe that the train is that it's safe for the train to depart and press a plunger somewhere along the platform, which would then cause the letters RA to appear on that display below the signal. That then tells the driver that they are safe to depart. It's quite a shame that that isn't implemented in train sim mode. I would love to have functionality of the RA indicators. Sometimes I sometimes I imagine them as being operational in my head, but doing that in a YouTube video is long, so I'm just going to ignore their presence. Now that we're up to 57 miles an hour, I've made an immediate 25% brake application because our speed limit will be reducing to 50 miles an hour at the end of this tunnel. Now that we're down to 50 miles an hour, I'm just momentarily reducing the braking force and increasing it back up to 25% as we pass the commencements of the 50 mile an hour speed limit. The reason why I'm remaining in 25% braking is because the speed limit will be reducing down to 30 miles an hour at the next signal. So this signal coming up here. So we're down to 35 miles an hour, just reducing the braking force very slightly. And down to 30 miles an hour. Actually, we're doing 31, so I'm just gonna continue braking a bit. Now we're down to 30 and releasing the brakes. And we're on a bit of a downward gradient approaching that 30 mile an hour speed limit. It levels off as you enter this tunnel here, but because the back of our train was still on that gradient, it caused our speed to roll slightly above 30. This is Chatham Station. I've made a 25% brake application on entry into the station. However, I've increased that to 50% momentarily, now reducing it back down to 25 and just bouncing between those two braking forces. Now momentarily releasing the brakes just to creep towards our stopping position, back up to 25% for the stop. Full service, into neutral, doors on the left. I am honestly half dead right now. I want to sleep so bad, but I'm determined and motivated. I need to get this done. I need to record this. So we are going to fight through this run up to Dartford, and then I am going to conk out. So we got about another 45 seconds until our scheduled departure time. I was saying that the timetable was pretty tight, but it's not too tight at these first few stations, but once you get beyond Gravesend, it gets extremely tight. So yeah, during the first part of the run, you can get away with driving not as aggressively. Just glancing at the signal now, it is displaying a green aspect, so I'm going to press the door close button due to the fact that we are now at our scheduled departure time. The door interlock light has illuminated, no one is trapped in the doors. Taking a final glance at the signal, F&R switch into forward, 25% power. Observing the brake cylinder gauge reading fall to 0, final glance of the monitors, and the speed limit is 30 miles an hour, so I'm only increasing the percentage of the accelerational force to 75%. Once we reach 27 miles an hour, I'm going to move the PBC into the off position. That is due to the fact that we are about to enter another downward gradient, which will cause our speed to roll upwards towards 30 miles an hour. And I will in fact need to apply a small amount of braking force to prevent us from exceeding 30 miles an hour. What we are passing through now, or what we are about to pass through, is the remains of the old Rochester station. So if you're a real OG train sim player like myself, you remember you used to have to stop here. But now Rochester Station is actually situated a couple hundred yards down the line. So just releasing the brakes there because our speed was coming down a bit too much, and like I said, tight timetable, you want to be sticking tight to these sticking tight to the speed limits, literally hugging those speed limits where you can. So this is Rochester Station now. I've applied 25% braking force on entry into the station, and I will adjust that where necessary as we approach our stopping position here. Going to momentarily up that to 50%, back down to 25. And that should bring us to a nice and controlled stop. I'm actually going to reduce that further very briefly and back up to 25. Perfect. Full service, neutral, doors on the left. Yeah, you can see the timetable starting to get a bit tight now. You really can't be wasting time, honestly. So we are about 10 seconds prior to our departure time, so I'm just going to glance at the signal now, which is green. Press the door close button. Door interlock light has illuminated, no one trapped in the doors. F&R switch into forward. Applying 25% power. Brake cylinder gauge reading falls to 0. Final glance of the monitors. And 75% power. I'm not sure if I took a final glance of the signal as well before moving off. It was obviously in my line of sight, but I didn't call it out, which is something I should be doing. Speed limit is still 30 miles an hour, so I'm going to shut off the power now. And we have a speed reduction down to 20 miles an hour at the end of this bridge, and that is due to the fact that we'll be turning off of the Chatham main line and onto the North Kent line, I believe. That is what this signal here dictates, with the 5 white lights pointing diagonally upwards to the right. If those lights were not illuminated, you'd be continuing straight to, I can't remember the next station in that direction. It might be Soul Street, but I could be wrong. And I've obviously braked down to 20 miles an hour as we passed that signal. If you were looking closely enough, you would have seen a 20 board with an arrow pointing to the right, telling us that the speed for this section of track here is 20 miles an hour. I'm now applying 25% braking force to reduce our speed down to 15 miles an hour. At the points that we just passed over, the trailing points, are those trailing or facing points? I always get the two confused. I think those are trailing points. At the trailing points that we just passed over, the speed limit reduces to 15 miles an hour. However, it is unmarked. There is no speed board there to tell you that it reduces to 15 miles an hour. You just have to know that it reduces to 15 miles an hour. That is where route knowledge comes into play. This is Strood Station. We're on a severe downward gradient at the moment. That is why I've got so much braking force in and the speed is barely reducing. And the stopping position is right at the end of the platform, so as we approach that now, I've just increasing the braking force and varying it as we approach our stopping position. There we go, lovely. Overshot it ever so slightly, but we are still on the platform, so that is not an issue. Full service, neutral, doors on the left. Sorry, I got a bit of a blocked nose as well. That's why I sound so dopey. I'm honestly fighting to stay alive at the moment. This is actually quite peak. Okay, so we have a green signal aspect. We're at our scheduled departure time of 5:17 and 30 seconds. So I'm going to whack the door close button. Observe the CCTV monitors as the doors close. No one is trapped in the doors and the door interlock light has illuminated. Taking a final glance of the signal aspect, it is still green. F&R switch is moved into the forward position. 25% power. Brake cylinder gauge reading falls to 0. And glancing at the monitors again just to make sure that no one is being dragged along for the ride. Now increasing the power to 50%, and when we reach 12 miles an hour, which we have now, I'm going to shut off the power completely due to the fact that we are still on a severe downward gradient. That is going to cause our speed to roll up to 15 miles an hour. We're now entering Strood Tunnel, and as you can see, we have a 45/70, meaning that freight trains are permitted to travel at 45 miles an hour on this section of track, and we are permitted to travel at 70 miles an hour on this section of track, when the full length of our train is clear of the board, of course. We're also slightly breaking the speed limit, but it's not the end of the world. What I tend to do is imagine a 2.5 mile an hour threshold above the speed limit. So as long as you remain within that threshold and you're not acknowledging the vigilance there, if you remain within that 2.5 mile an hour threshold and you're not there for too long, then you're doing all right. You're still technically breaking the speed limit, but it's not compromising the safety of the train in any way. That isn't an excuse to deliberately travel at 2.5 miles an hour above the speed limits all the time, but just to use that as a general threshold for breaking the speed limit. And yeah, I've now gone into full power and we begin accelerating towards 70 miles an hour. I've forgotten to set up the GSMR radio handset. That should have been done in the platform at Gillingham station, but it's not been simulated realistically enough. I don't really bother touching it, to be honest. Anyway, we're up to 57 miles an hour, up to 60 miles an hour, acknowledging the vigilance alert. Up to 65 miles an hour. Sorry, I got the sniffles. And we're up to 70 miles an hour, so I'm moving the PBC into the off position. And about midway through the second tunnel is a good place to get the brakes in for Gillingham station. So we're about midway through the tunnel now. Just making a 25% brake application, and I may need to increase that to 50% as we get closer towards Gillingham station. Gillingham station is literally just beyond the exit of this tunnel, so it is quite easy to get caught out. I'm going to actually increase the braking force from now, just to ensure that we don't enter the station too fast. Down to 40 miles an hour, 35, 30. Just going to remain in 50% braking just for a little bit longer, and I've now reduced it to 25%. That is due to the fact that the stopping position isn't all the way at the end of the platform. It's more or less 2/3 of the way along the platform, so you don't want to be entering too fast. And here we are, Gillingham station. Full service, into neutral, doors on the left.